question. If somebody were to ask you, a bar, coffee shop, whatever, who you are, what would you say the answer to it is?
I am a coach who transforms businesses and their teams from the inside out. That's how I would answer it.
From the inside out. Interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
so elaborate on that. That could mean all kinds of things. I'm curious. What does that mean?
Yeah, so in our coaching, the number, and this actually, it what didn't come easily to me to figure this out of what I was doing. But in my coaching, the way that I've gotten really, really good results with our clients and their teams is by working from the inside out, meaning that whatever problem we have that's going on in our business and in our life too, but we'll focus on the business for this. In our business, we have to take ownership of it and we have to start with ourselves first. And we have to look at, well, how am I contributing to this? What am I bringing to this? Which sometimes can be a tough thing when we're in that whole loop of, blaming it's the employees, it's my cash flow, it's my clients, it's all these things that we're blaming and we're making a lot of excuses around. But it's much harder to change those things if we're not taking full ownership for them. So that's what I mean by inside out. We're going to start with the inside. We're going to start with ourselves. And then we're going to work to the outside world where I think most people try to do it in the opposite way, where they're just like, tell me what to do to get out of this. And we're all taking action, and we're all so busy. And sometimes it solves the problem. And often not, or it comes back and it keeps repeating itself. So we like to take a different approach.
So how do we start with it? Let's say that you're consulting or coaching me. How would we begin? Where do we start?
Well, the first thing that we would start with is clarity on what is it that you're struggling with? Like, what is the challenge that you're having? And once we have clarity on the actual challenge, so, if it's sales or if it's cash flow or if it's a member of your team, the first thing that we're going to do is get clarity on what that problem is, and then we're going to take ownership of it. We're going to start by taking ownership. And once we're really owning it, now we can do some of that deeper work. So, what we do is we start by looking inside ourselves, and are there any limiting beliefs? Are there any fears?
Hmm.
Maybe there's some belief systems that we've created around this. And it may be coming from other parts of our lives or earlier on in our even in our childhood. It could be coming from these other places. So we have a coaching technique that we use to go back and really figure out where this stuff is coming from and then correct it. So once we correct it, then we don't bring it forward into our present and into our future. So we have a correction that we will run on our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions. And then we also have another correction that we run on our words and the language that we're using. So once we start to correct these things, it really kind of gets us in alignment and back into our natural flow. And then from there, it's about action and results. So it's taking the actions that we need to take to then start getting the result that we're after.
Can we walk through an example of, let's say identifying a problem and then walking it back to the root cause, as Sigmund Freud would say. We can walk through, So how does that work? Like, give me an example. We kind of walk it back.
Yeah, that's so great. I'd be happy to do that. It's funny because sometimes when I take business owners through this, they're like, Jennifer, I don't want to go to therapy, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, I promise we're not going to go to therapy. We're not going to sit in therapy for 10 years and talk about it. This is a coaching technique that we use to get to the heart of it and flip it around quick. So, a great example, we just got back a few weeks ago from our last business retreat that we led in Sedona. And one of my clients, when we're sitting in the mastermind group, she came to us because she has a problem with her sales. She's just not getting the clients that she really wants to have into the business. And so what we did is we kind of broke this into two pieces because we've got the inside piece and we've got the outside piece. The inside is more of our feeling stuff, our feeling world, and the outside is going to be more of our thinking our way and our action and taking action. And so as we got a little bit further, she's a therapist, and as we kind of dug into this a little further, we realized that she has a deep belief that therapists don't sell. And
Mhm.
so it's like, all right, well, you're having trouble with sales and you have an underlying belief that therapists don't sell. So if you're listening, you're probably like, yeah, duh, that makes perfect sense. But she didn't realize that it was her belief that therapists don't sell that's actually what's blocking her sales. And so we went through a technique to first identify this belief that sometimes we don't even know we're carrying these things. So then once we knew, like, oh, this is the belief I'm bringing into it, we run a correction on it to correct it. And then from there, it's okay. So now what do you need to do to go out and get more of those sales? And it was so amazing that once she got rid of that belief, now she was like, oh, I need to be doing boom, boom, and boom, like all these tactical actions that she already kind of knew about, but wasn't taking because that underlying belief was really kind of blocking it. So, this is what I mean by two parts of it, like that underlying, like therapists don't sell. Well, that's why you're not getting any sales, honey. So, we need to fix that. So, when we fixed that, now she's out taking tactical actions. And that was a few weeks ago. And I believe she's already got a couple new clients because now we're bringing them in and she's doing the things that she needs to do. And when I say things, I mean like, going to a networking event that she wasn't going to before, asking for the business where she wasn't doing that before. Even a simple thing like putting a link to schedule a time with her on her email signature, she wasn't doing before. So those kinds of things would sort of now will open the door so that way she can bring those clients in.
Yeah, it's like, what do you mean you don't sell? You sold yourself on being a therapist. You sell clients on change. I mean, why can't you sell them on the opportunity to change? It's
Right.
so you walk me through the reframing process. You call it correcting, which is interesting. Walk me through that, how you look at that. How would we begin to correct a limiting belief that's affecting our identity and actions?
Yeah, such a great question. We do have a process, and it's a process where there's a little bit of sort of feeling your way through it, but the high level concept behind it is to first identify what we're feeling, what's going on. Where did we maybe feel that earlier on? If we look back in our past, where did we feel that earlier on? And then we just have a little process that we run through. I shouldn't say it's a little, it is a little process, but it can go pretty deep and it can be pretty intense for people, depending on how far back they're going, the stuff that they've dealt with. But in a nutshell, what's happening is as we grow, so human beings, in our first 6, 7 years of life, we're modeling. That's how humans learn how to be humans, is we look at the people and stuff around us. And so we take everything in, we don't have any boundaries. So in those earlier years, if we learned something a certain way, we will bring that forward into our present. And so our correction process, what we're doing is we're just going back and we're correcting it. So it's kind of like we're unlearning the way we learned it, which isn't serving us, and then we're going to relearn it a new way. So that way we can be in our present and our future without that way that we kind of learned it. So I don't know if that explains it well enough, but essentially that's what we're doing is we're just taking the things that we've learned and those belief systems we've picked up and we are correcting them so that way we don't bring them in and have them affect the things that are going on. I think a lot of business owners don't realize it's the underlying emotional crap that's blocking you in the business. And so they hire a business coach and say, help me fix my business. It's like, okay, but guess what? We have to fix you first. But when we fix you, not that you're broken, you're not, but when we correct these things, now you are free. You are free of all of this stuff. It frees so much of the mind chatter. It frees so much of being torn. It frees so much of like shaming ourselves and guilting ourselves and all of this stuff, and really allows us to step into who we're really here to be.
Who we're here to be, that taps into the higher level, which is the identity, the overlying way that you look at yourself, and then the beliefs that form that identity, which then dictate the actions. And so if you got a belief that you're not going to sell anything, you don't like selling, therapists don't sell, or selling's bad, or money is profiting is evil in some way, beliefs that permeate through society for some reason. If you got these beliefs, it's going to affect the way that you act, right? And so there's an interesting correction. I don't know if I'd call it a correction. I'd call it maybe alignment with truth or something. Correction
Yeah.
sounds like a whip in class or something. Like gotta correct you, man. Like with a ruler on the forehead or something. But but it is like that. Walking back and then kind of realizing, these are the reasons why you're not getting the results you want. there's some sort of limiting belief we got to make an adjustment on. How do we do it? Let's use the therapist for an example. What did you do with her to walk her back to realize where it came from? And then
Mhm.
what did you do once you were at that core point?
Yeah, so we really and truly just went back earlier into her childhood and the things that she grew up with. And it's a lot of like what you just said, where we had to pull out where the lie was and then to replace it with truth because she had developed a belief system around, she's in the healing space that they don't sell. And it went back to earlier stuff that had happened in her childhood. And so once we could identify it, then we could do something with it. And this is what I mean by owning it because we pick these things up. We choose how we're going to interpret things. That's our ability to do. And so if we can say, hey, wait a second, I learned it this way, forget blaming everybody or why or all that stuff, but just like I learned it this way. This is what I latched onto. And now I choose to bring something new in. And it really and truly is, it's just like you break apart that belief system because you break apart the lies that it
Mm.
is, because it's totally a lie. Of course, therapists sell, and it seems easy and obvious to the outside world, but when you're in it and this is your belief and you don't even realize that that's the belief you've been carrying, it's so eye-opening to go, oh, that's what's going on. And that's what I love about these coaching techniques because I've been in many years of therapy. I'm a fan. I like it. But what I don't like is that sometimes you can sit for years and therapists don't always have tools to help you actually heal it at the source so we can move on from it. And, sometimes just sitting and talking about it just agitates everything and it can be really frustrating. And I think that's why sometimes people say, if they're saying therapy doesn't work, well, when you're sitting and you're talking and you're agitating it all the time, but not healing it, it could certainly feel like it's not working. So that's why I love the coaching world and the coaching techniques because my job as a coach is to coach people through it as fast as possible. They don't want to sit in, business therapy for 10 years. They want to get in there and get the stuff resolved so that they can move on. So that's where the coaching through it can really be transformational in a short period of time.
Do you get paid on result or hourly? How do you structure the payments?
Yeah, neither. We actually do a monthly flat retainer, and
Oh, I
that
see.
covers all of our private coaching. We've tried different things, and I know a lot of coaches use these group programs right now, and more power to them. But we found that we get the best results in private coaching. So, coaching with me or any of my team, we do private one-on-one coaching. We do have an open coaching call every week where people can come if they need to dive into a specialty area or they couldn't cover something with their coach on their call. We do that every single week. And then, of course, we do retreats where we get to be face to face and we can deep dive with our clients. And so the way that we package that all up is with a month to month retainer.
How'd you get into it? I mean, it's interesting. What's your background like? It's a super interesting way to look at business coaching to begin with. So, what's the story?
Yeah, so it's so funny. I got into coaching because I got screwed over by my partner. That's how I got into it.
Huh.
Which is really funny because I started my first software company when I was 23. I did that for about 10 or 12 years and then I sold it because I wanted out of software. I wanted to do something different. So I bought a log home company, which was a massive failure. And so I closed my doors within a year. And then I got very disillusioned with being an entrepreneur. So I went into corporate. And when I was in corporate, I was the software division president for a big $54 million manufacturing firm. And I grew my division revenues pretty quickly. But I didn't like corporate. Was not for me. And so I left and went out to kind of like reinvent myself. And I ended up taking a position with a national entrepreneurs network. And I was brought in to do their masterminding and accountability circles, which I loved the work. And part of the agreement was that I would have a small salary and equity in the company, which I was like all in for. And so I tripled revenues while I was there and put a lot of structure in and just it was just working fantastic. But when it came time to honor the equity agreement, my partner, she chose not to do that, which was really devastating to me at the time. I was just I was really devastated. And so I ended up giving my resignation and leaving. But many of the people that I had been coaching, they wanted to keep working with me. And so they followed me. And literally, my coaching practice was born from just this horrible, devastating thing where I'd put years into something and lost it all. But it started my coaching practice, and that was over 12 years ago now. So
Hmm.
now I have three or four other coaches on my team. We have an internal marketing agency. We're growing like gangbusters. We do amazing work, and so I'm actually very grateful that she did what she did, because if not, I might still be, working for her.
Funny how that works, eh? Things seem
Yeah,
terrible at the time, and then you look back and it's like, all right, well,
yeah,
thank God that happened. Yeah, it's funny like that. It's just hard when you're in the thick of it to realize that, okay, one day I'm gonna look back at this and seriously be grateful for it. I don't know how
yeah.
yet, but maybe I'll just
Right.
give up control and go along with the flow and see what happens. And so it's interesting. What about the software end of things? Do you look at because you were a software developer?
Hmm.
Do you
Yeah.
use
So
that mindset when it comes to reframing a belief or reprogramming a mind?
yeah, I mean, I'm all about reprogramming. I was never a developer. I was always on the front end. I did everything else. So I did a lot of like des designing the software to work for the end user, even though like the way a developer might develop software, so it's easy for them. It wasn't always easy for them to develop in such a way that made it user friendly for the user. So I was always on the front end of figuring out what it needed to do, kind of being that translator between the end user and the developer. But we did point of sale systems. So we had software that was in water parks, ski resorts, amusement parks, any place that you would go and you would buy a ticket to get in. We did the turnstiles and season passes and all that stuff. So it was a pretty fun kind of niche industry to be in. But even today in my coaching practice, like I love software. I use software for all kinds of things. And I didn't even make that connection, Kyle, but that is what we're doing. I'm just reprogramming human beings now instead of instead of
Yeah.
X's and O's.
Yeah, and opening turnstiles of potential action in the future that's more progressive and effective than what they're doing now. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's a correlation there. It's funny. All right,
Yeah.
so what's a question that I should be asking you, but I'm not, that if I were to ask would be able to extract a lot of value? Hey, I hope you're enjoying the podcast, and I want to let you know that I've got a free book that you can get if you want to tap into more of these resources. And you can get that for free at kylesbook.com. Back to the podcast.
Oh my goodness, that's a great one. What's a question that you should be asking? So ask me. Well, right now, what's really top of mind for me that I'm doing a lot of talks about is hating your business, if we're just going to throw it right out there. I think that so many business owners, and my new book just dropped this week, so it's really high on my mind right now. But I think that so often business owners, we go through phases in our business where we're kind of hating it, even if we don't want to use that word because it is a strong word. But even if we're disliking it, that's still just a little bit of hate, and we need to call it what it is. And we go through these phases, and I think that so often business owners, we just sort of smile to the outside world even though we're hurting on the inside. We don't ask for help, we don't talk about it, but it's a very, very real thing. And like what we just talked about, where my partner had screwed me over, like that was devastating for me. Even though I kind of put a smile on to the outside world, it was really, really hard to go through. And so as business owners, we go through these phases of like, I'm really hating my business right now. But it's like clues. It's all clues and opportunities of things that like either we need to work on or maybe a different direction that we need to go. So if we can start to see it for what it really is, then we can actually pull the value out of it. But it can be really tough when we're just pulled down into a lot of those lower emotions. So I guess if you ask me about like, hey, how if I have parts of my business that I'm not liking right now, like how do I get out of it? That would be a great thing to talk about a little bit.
Well, let's get into it. Let's say that there's I mean, you can't love every part of it. I'm grateful because I'm freaking excited, especially where I'm at right now. Like, there's problems galore, but I'm having fun every day trying to put out these fires. And so there's a real adventure to the unknown of it, which I'm finding exciting. But there are always parts of it that you don't like, whether it's dealing with boring conversations with clients or answering stupid questions that it's like you can't believe you don't know the answer to it. There's all kinds of stuff that you don't enjoy, I suppose, like, or at least more so, it could be more enjoyable as opposed to other things that you do. So let's get into it. How do we look at the parts that we're not loving or we're having a little bit of hate sprinkled in there, which is funny how you put that. How do we do it? What do we do?
Yeah, and I love how you said, well, you can't love every part of your business. And I say, well, why not? It doesn't mean that I have to be doing everything in my business, but why can't I love every single part of my business? Even the things that right now that I may be doing, it doesn't mean that you have to do them forever, but what if you had somebody else doing them for you and they were doing it even better than you? You'd probably start to love that, right? Whether it's customer service or sales or whatever that is, because I get it. Like, I don't want to answer stupid questions all day either, but there is a person who loves doing customer service out there and they love answering quote stupid questions all day long. And for them, they're in service and that lights them up and that makes them feel amazing. So when we can like look at the roles, the responsibilities in our company, we can make sure that we are in the roles that we really love. And then we find people to be in the roles that we don't love so much, but now they're killing it. They're doing a great job. You really can love every part of your business.
You can, but there's a downside to
Yeah.
everything. You can't have the positive without the negative. Hiring somebody to do it, yes, you could potentially love it, but it's also freaking a lot of the time it's hard to find somebody that will do it the way that you would want it to be done if you were to do it yourself. It's a major problem. It's common, it's like you find somebody to do maybe 80% of what you would how you would do it and what you want it to look like, and you leave it at
Yes.
that, and you kind of just allow it to happen, you ignore the frustration as much as possible. How do you look at that? It's like you hire something out, you realize that it's not being done the way that you thought it was.
Yep.
How do you look at the giving up control of it? How do you look at the whole situation?
Well, when it's happening and you're in the thick of it, it is very easy to just be like, why is this happening? But I choose to look at everything as an opportunity. So I choose to see the gift in it, the blessing in it, the opportunity in it. And when you can find the gift, then it no longer is negative because you find the gift. And so the gift is it pointed out a flaw in my process. And now I have clarity and know exactly what I need to fix. So instead of like wondering, where's this process broken? Like it points it out and it says, oh, it's broken right here. This is what I need to go and fix. Maybe there's a shortcoming in my own skill set. And it's like, ooh, I needed to know that. So in the beginning, it can feel like, oh, this feels like a negative thing that's happening. But if I really understand, wait a second, this is a piece of information I need to know. This just happened in my book launch where some things got dropped and I got very angry. And then I'm like, wait a second, let me own this, right? I drink my own Kool-Aid, Kyle. Let me own this. Like, what's the good side here? And it's like, oh, right. Like, look how much I learned about doing a book launch. Look how much I learned about blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, when I saw it like that, it was no longer a negative and it felt really good. So it can start as something that doesn't feel good, but then we are the ones who can turn it around. Nobody else can do it for us. So we're either going to go into it and say, well, it's not possible to love every part of my business, or we can go into it and say, what do I need to do so that I can love every part of my business? And let me take ownership of that.
Great question. I love it. When you came down to, the reframing the book example, what
Yeah.
what did you do? You said to find the positive side to it, the other side of the coin. How do you do that? How do you change the meaning of it? Do you ask yourself that question and then sincerely answer it wholeheartedly?
I do. I absolutely do. And part of what helped me with the book launch, and so we just launched the book, but what we are also doing is we just launched an author accelerator program where we're helping a lot of our clients get their books written. And so for me, when I looked at the mistakes that happened in my own book launch, I was like, oh, thank goodness it happened on my stuff because I would never want it to happen on a client's stuff. So that's where the gratitude came around. I'm like, oh, thankfully we learned this on my stuff. So then we were able to correct it in our roadmap of just like bing, bing, bing. So now we know going forward and serving our clients, we're going to do a better job of serving our clients and helping them in their book launches. We won't make those same mistakes. So that's how I turned it around and was like, now I'm really grateful for it. And honestly, did it really matter? No, it really didn't matter. It matters in that moment, but
Yeah.
I think we're human beings. Things happen. It's going to piss us off, and it's just like, bah. But it's like, take a deep breath. Yes, I use my tools. Let me look at this in a different way. What have I learned from this? What are the gifts in it? And then as soon as I shift it, it's like all that anger and hate and resentment and blaming, it just sort of goes away and you replace it with gratitude. And now I see it. Now I see it.
Mm. Now you see it. Yeah, because
Now
you
I
see the
see it.
whole thing, right? Because once you
Right.
see it, you're focused on the one side of it. But the way I like to visualize it is like a gem. Because I was thinking about an object that I could see both sides of at the same time, right? And I was like, the coin analogy is great for a lot of reasons, but it's also you can't see the other side of it, like by
Hmm.
definition, right?
Yeah.
You can't see it. It's impossible to imagine a one-sided wave. It's just there's got to have the other side to it. But I needed to have something that I could see both sides at once so I could visualize and have both meanings in my mind with one image. And so I used a gem. I was like, okay, so I actually used ChatGPT last year to come up with this image. I was like, how can what's something that I can use to visualize a problem that has both positive and negative in one viewpoint? And yeah, so I can put it in a see-through gem and have the positive and negative on either side. And then it's interesting because then, and this goes to the painting that you've got back behind you to your left. It's the every positive has a negative, and then that negative has a positive, and it kind of infinitely expands into the void, which is uh, amazing and beyond words. How do you look at the whole thing as what's at the center of a belief to you? What's if we can see both sides of it and change the meaning so much, then what's at the core of it?
I think that's where a lot of our personal power lives, truthfully, because we have the power to create. We can create calm or we can create chaos. We can create confusion. We can create clarity. Like we get to choose. And guess what? It's the exact same amount of effort that we put into it. Like with the book launch, when it went, things didn't go quite as planned. I could have gotten very angry. I could have, rah, rah. I could have created a lot of big, yucky emotions that could have caused a lot of division in my team. It could have ruined some relationships, like all of that. But I could have done that. Instead, I chose to take a moment and be like, wait a second, get clear on what my outcome is. I do want calm and clarity and learning. So I choose that. And now it'll be a great learning opportunity for my whole team. It'll bring us closer. We're going to sell a lot more books as a result of it. And we're going to help our clients sell a lot more of their books. So again, same amount of effort, but at the center of that belief is it's my belief. I created it, so I could change it, but it's my belief. I've got to own it. If I don't own it, I can't do anything really about it. I'll be at the mercy of everything that's going on around me. So I do believe that's really where our personal power lives, is right there where we get to choose.
So at the core is really emptiness. It's meaning to be made, and it's malleable. So if we can look at it either way, then at the very core of it, there's nothing there. We're making meaning around it either way. And
Mhm.
it kind of goes to the whole physics aspect of even this table that's in front of us right now. I assume you got a table in front of you. You're not looking at a floating monitor over there. The table that's in front
Yeah.
of us. You look down the
Yeah.
molecular level, and it's mostly space, and which is
Yeah.
like you can't fathom. It's unbelievable. And so
Yeah.
that's the way I look at a belief is at the core of it, it's mostly space, and we can make whatever meaning out of it that we want. Which, when you realize that, gives you full control and no control at the same time, which is very interesting. Um, yeah, what do you think about what I just said?
Yeah, I agree completely. There is a lot of space in there. And okay, I'm probably not going to use the right scientific terms, but I know that like when they look at, I think it's a neuron or something like that, that inside of it, there's so much space. And that is part of what allows us to create whatever we want. If you look at traumatic events, there's post-traumatic stress disorder, there's also post-traumatic growth. And you can choose whichever you want to have come out of these, stressful experiences, because post-traumatic growth is a choice that we make of how can I learn and get stronger from this quote bad thing that we labeled as bad thing that just happened. So 100%, it's within our power to choose what we want to create from anything that's coming to us. But I truly believe that stuff that's coming up, it's there for us. It's like, hey, this needs to be healed. Hey, this is a belief system that isn't serving you, and stuff is going to keep coming up until you resolve it.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's an infinitely complex and also very simple problem at the end of the day. Opportunity, it's interesting. I love it. So very cool. It's an interesting approach that you take to business coaching. Um, you look at it very much so from the psychological and spiritual lens, even. Would you describe it like that? The both those as one?
I do. I really do. Now, like in my marketing, my website, you're not going to see like spiritual kind of wording, right? A lot
Yeah.
of business owners were tactical and we're just like, tell me what to do. So I don't use a lot of that language in my marketing because I just don't. It just doesn't often resonate. But then once somebody starts working with us and or me and we establish trust, because it's very, very important, especially if we're going to go to some of these deeper places within yourself, that we have that trust because I'm trusting them, they're trusting me. Then, yeah, then it's like, all right, we're going to go a little deeper because if you really want to solve this, we're probably going to need to go a little deeper to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you read Jung or Freud or I mean, what about the psychological titans of the mind, you could say, original explorers? What would you who are your influences in terms of that?
I haven't really read much of them at all, to be honest. I went through 4 years of trauma therapy because I had a lot of abuse from my childhood. So I
Mm,
did do many years of therapy, and I found that as I went through it, I just like when I was ready, a resource would find me. So I've read a lot of different books, and of course, and then went through therapy myself, and then was learning coaching techniques as I went along the way. One of my favorites is Michael Singer. I love his Surrender Experiment and the Untethered Soul. That really got me thinking in some very, very different ways. But no, I really haven't studied Freud. I didn't go to college to be a therapist, but I had pain that was blocking me in life from getting the result that I wanted. And it wasn't making me very happy. And I made a choice, a very conscious decision that I wanted to heal this stuff and not bring it forward into my future. And I saw patterns happening in my business that it was like all that tactical action wasn't solving them. It just, the problem kept coming up and up. And so when I started to look deep within myself, that's when I realized, oh, this is where the problem actually is. And yeah, read a lot of books. Oh, and still continue to learn, still continue to practice. But because I'm not a therapist, I don't have any plans of being a therapist, even though many people have said I would be a good one, and that's great. But I love being a coach because I like being able to just go in there and work on this stuff and get it fixed. So that way, boom, now we can work on the business and work on the fun parts of the
mm.
business. Yeah.
Mm. So that brings us to the next point, which is like you got the beliefs. That's the first part of what you do when you go to
Yeah.
coach somebody. Then you make these adjustments, align their actions with how they view themselves, and then what do we do next? What's the next
Then
step?
we take tactical action. Then it's
Right.
about like, let's take action because we need to get the result. We need to take action. And so that's where we have everything. We use a tool I developed called our roadmap. And in our roadmap, we literally just have it all mapped out of these are the things you need to do for your marketing, for your sales, for, your operations, your processes, like all those different things. And absolutely. Then it's like, all right, come on. Let's go. Now we need to get some things done to get the result we're after.
Yeah, I love how you take the first step before moving on to tactics because you got to really adjust the beliefs. Otherwise, the tactics might often just make it worse. What about the forcing of it? Because if you're, this is an interesting conundrum with goal setting in general. If you have an idea of what the future should look like, quote unquote, then how do you balance that with not forcing that result? How do you look at that whole situation?
Well, those of us who have, and I am one of them, I can raise my hand to that, who have tried to force a result. Sometimes you can force it, and even when you do, you might feel good about it for a little while, but it usually doesn't last. Or you spend so much time and effort trying to force it, force it, force it, and it never happens. You just sort of like wear yourself out, and now you start feeling a lot of burnout and stuff around it. So anything in your business that I think you're trying to force, that's we need to stop for a second and we need to take a look at. And let's go and make sure that it's not something deeper that's going on. If it is, let's resolve it. And now sometimes it's so beautiful sometimes what will happen where once we uncover that belief, we'll call it that limiting belief that's holding you back, once we figure out what it is, we bring truth in there, uncover that lie and let it go, then sometimes that same tactical action you were taking, it just starts working. It's like, wait a second, this didn't
Mm,
work before.
mm,
But guess what? You're different. You're different now. And when you show up and you take that action from a different place, you're going to get a different result. So this happens like with clients that will come to me and they'll be like, oh, you're like, hey, have you tried this, this, and this? And they're like, yeah, I tried it. I did it. I did it. I did it. Like, I've done everything. Nothing's going to work. It's like, all right. Well, let's work on you. Let's work on you. And then you might be shocked that some of those things you had tried before actually can work, but it can only work with you in a different place.
mm. With you in a different place, can you give me an
Yeah.
example of, you said you went through a traumatic childhood. Can
Mhm.
you give me an example of something that you changed the meaning of, and then how
Yeah,
that tactically
absolutely.
changed the results that you were getting?
Yeah, absolutely. So I use these tools on myself, and I have always not liked, I could even say hated, I've hated networking. Like, I don't want to network. I don't want to go into a room full of people and have to like have these conversations. And I made up a whole lot of reasons why it was okay that I hated networking. And then I have a lot of other ways that I market that don't involve networking. But as a business coach, I do recognize there's a value and power in networking that I really was missing out on, but I didn't understand why. And so when I ran the correction on myself and I went way, way back, I uncovered a belief that I had that I wasn't safe with the adults because as
Mm,
a child, I wasn't safe with the adults. My grandparents couldn't protect me. My parents were the problem and I wasn't safe. And so I created this belief that I'm not safe with the adults. And I carried that forward. And as soon as I uncovered it, it was weird because it was just like this little spider web of things of like boom, 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 like light
mm,
bulbs going on and things opening. And I realized I didn't feel safe when I went into a room to network with people. And that was actually the problem. And as soon as I corrected it, I literally went out and signed up for a networking event and I went and I had a great time and I met a lot of people and it was wonderful. But like, I'm not kidding when I say like in all my business years, so over 25 years, I've been like, I hate networking. And that wasn't true at all. I actually love people. I love working with people. You could put me on a stage where I'm speaking to, I don't care how many thousands, doesn't bother me at all, but I feel safe in that space. When you put me in a room where I have to be like face to face with
interesting.
strangers, don't
Mhm.
feel safe there. So when I uncovered it though, and I realized what was happening, it just sort of opened me up to be like, oh, wow, you know what? I can actually go and I can network for my business now.
It's beautiful. It really is. What's the difference between, speaking on stage and talking with an individual? Because, they say like speaking on stage is speaking to a bunch of individuals instead of a
Yeah.
crowd. What was the difference internally before you made that shift?
Yeah, for me, I've never had a fear of public speaking. You could put me on a stage, I don't care. I get up there, let's go.
Mm,
But for me personally, it didn't feel as intimate because I'm on the stage. I've got the stage around me. I feel like I've got a protection, a layer of protection there between me and all the people.
Mm,
When I go into a room of strangers where I have to like face to face, you know, shake hands, and I can absolutely start a conversation. If I'm forced to do it, I can do it, but I never like enjoyed it and I would certainly avoid it. But then once I realized, oh, this is just about feeling safe, I'm like, oh wait, I actually feel very safe within myself. I can do
mm.
this. That was the difference for me personally. I know a lot of people have a fear of speaking, so it might not be the same for them, but for me, that's where I felt safe on a stage, but not safe in that like face-to-face conversation.
You know, it's interesting because now you're in the coaching business where you prefer, quote, that you wanted to do one-on-one private instead of group coaching, like a lot of people are doing now. You know,
Yeah.
so it's like the total opposite of the belief and the actions that you were taking before based on that belief. It's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting because I've always done one-on-one coaching. And when I am in a relationship and now we've established trust, I'm good to go. Like I have many clients who've worked with me for years and I cherish those relationships. It was really specifically a room full of strangers. It's like one at a time, like a client one at a time, great. But having to go into that room full of strangers, that's where it was. And so again, it's just a process and we're all different and we all pick up different things. And for me, I just had to work through and figure out like, where is this connected? Where is it stopping me?
Mm,
And, being able to network in your business is such a powerful, powerful tool. And I was kind of missing out on it because of this one little piece in there where I didn't feel safe doing it.
mm. Interesting. And one little thing like that, then it goes back to your childhood. You identified that and you made the adjustments. And so yeah, it's interesting. I think that's a beautiful place to leave it. It's something that we can all take and identify where we're struggling right now, identify what caused that to begin with, oftentimes in childhood, and then be able to make adjustments in that meaning that you associated to that action to then empower yourself to be able to not be limited anymore. So there's really something to that, and I think that's a big part of the game that we call life. We're all trying to figure out here. So it's what it's all about. I love it. Anything else you want to add before we kick this off?
No, that's it. Just know that there's a connection. So if there's things going on in your business that you're not loving, the connection, it goes to within you. And if you at least know where to look, now you have a chance of of fixing it or bringing truth into it.
Hmm,
So that's it. Yeah.
I love it. How do we find you? Social media, how do we, if we want to do business with you, where do we go?
Absolutely. I'm out there. Just visit me on my website, which is jenniferdawncoaching.com. If you want to check out more about my new book, you can go to applestandbook.com. And yeah, that's where you can find me, jenniferdawncoaching.com. I'm out there on social. Our contact form on our website actually works. You can put a message in there, it will go to me. I will respond to it.
Love it. And then you'll have an individual conversation, not a group conversation, which is a shift based on what came naturally to you, and you've been able to
Yeah,
adjust that, which is proof that we can do the same with limiting factors in our lives and belief systems as well. So, Jennifer, I appreciate you, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.
you're very welcome. Thanks for having me, Kyle.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that podcast episode. And if you want to get a free copy of my book, go to kylesbook.com and you can get a copy there. I'll talk with you soon.